Hello everyone and welcome to the very first Marvel Snap video on this channel. Name's Collins. But basically we're going to be going over the deck I used to climb to some 100 and something rank. Honestly, past like 150 you see a lot of bots, so anything past is pretty inflated, but I did use it to climb through the toughest part of it, which is 70 to about 140. So without further ado, let's begin. So we used DarkHawk Zabu list. So I know that's gonna you're gonna get some groans right there because we do have DarkHawk, right? That's a Series 5 card. I put a collection level of 1500, so you get a Series 5 card on average every 400 boxes. So pretty much that's around 5,000 collection levels. So you get one Series 5 card through their collection track, and you're pretty much not going to see another one. But we got DarkHawk. We were playing it before the season started, so we were pretty familiar with how DarkHawk worked. Zabu was just a nice, clean addition that made this deck really pop. But we can go through the cards one by one, talk about what each of them do, why they're important. I don't think it makes sense to go from like ascending order, so we'll just talk core cards, core concepts, why each card is good. First of all, we have Zabu, a very strong, very important piece of the composition. A lot of this deck is based around hitting Zabu on 3, and then once you get Zabu on 3, it opens up a lot more options for you to do in the following 3 turns. So Zabu is very core. I would say if you get Zabu on 3, that's definitely a tendency to snap because you're going to be very favored. Obviously, other people can play Zabu as well, so you're not guaranteed to win, but it is definitely a card if you don't have, you're going to feel a lot weaker power level. Very core card, very strong. I wouldn't mind a nerf for it. Second core card would be DarkHawk, right? These are the namesakes of the DarkHawk deck. So we did get a cool inked version, but DarkHawk is also very core to this deck. So the issue with Zabu initially, if you're just starting out or you don't have a lot of pull 3 cards, is there's not a lot of powerful pull 4 cards to synergize with Zabu, and DarkHawk is that one core 4 drop that you need. So it really gives you a lot of room to play with. It gives you a lot of power. There's a lot of locations that really like giving cards to your deck, like Subterranea, things like that. So this is definitely a very core card, very powerful. If you don't draw this card, once again, it's kind of like Zabu, where you're gonna notice it, you're gonna feel it, and especially since our deck is revolved around those 2 cards, you really do want those 2 cards to be in your hand when you feel confident when snapping. All right, so everything else in the deck is really just a derivative of those 2 cards. Everything else doesn't really make sense if you take those 2 cards out. This deck really wouldn't function at all. So if you don't have Zabu, I would say you can't really run this deck. I was running a DarkHawk deck without Zabu before the season came out. But it definitely feels significantly better with Zabu in. And you can run Zabu without DarkHawk. There are other options, but that's not what we're talking about right now. And in terms of this particular composition, if you don't have DarkHawk, it doesn't make sense. Now we can kind of go through the rest of the cards and how they relate to this deck. So we have Cog. There's kind of some themes with this deck, right? So we'll put them in bunches. We have Cog. It adds a rock to your hand. Why this is important: number one, it's a 1-drop, so it gives you something to do on 1. Number 2, rocks are actually really good for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's a rock in your opponent's deck, right? So that's caused a lot of disruption. That's a lot of secret value that you don't notice you're getting when your opponents are drawing rocks and they're not drawing the key cards they need. Second of all, DarkHawk's ability, as you should know by now, you get +2 power for each card in your opponent's deck. So every time you add something to your opponent's deck or you deny a draw, you are essentially giving DarkHawk +2 power. So when you look at this card, instead of this being a 1-mana 2, you should actually look at this as a 1-mana 4, which is actually really good, as well as the disruption effect, that hidden value. So this card becomes very powerful once you're playing with DarkHawk. Definitely a core part of the DarkHawk engine. Same value, same concept as Rock Slide. So this shuffles 2 rocks into your opponent's deck. So very similar to Korg, where instead of looking at this as a 4 power 6, when you play with DarkHawk, it's now a 4 power 10. So, and it also has a secret disruption where they're getting a lot of rocks and it really annoys your opponent. So once again, this is also a very core card in the composition, making sure you're buffing up your DarkHawk values and getting stronger. And then the last part of that core concept would be Black Widow. So a lot of people don't really like Black Widow. It's the weaker of the weakest one of the 3, but I do think it still provides good enough value, has a lot of upside, and still is pretty strong. So this gives a Widow's Bite to your hand. When you take a look at Widow's Bite, what Widow's Bite does is when this is in your hand, cards in your deck cannot be drawn. Now this is kind of like a nuisance for your opponent. Usually they just play it next turn, but you do deny a card from your opponent. So once again, instead of looking at this like a 2-mana 2/1, it's more of a 2-mana 2/3. It also disrupts your opponent. They don't get to draw. You can fill their hand with these bites if you get like double battle cry or anything like that. So sinister location also gives you 2 of them, so you can really tie up your opponent's board, and that can be really powerful. I was running Widow in just a disruption deck where I'd give them useless things like that, rocks and Widows. I mean, Brock's on their board with what's that one card called? I know we're getting a little bit off topic. Debris, right? With Debris. But Widows kind of does the same thing, disrupts your opponent. More of a 2-mana 2/3. It also wins some locations flat out. So Lamentus, right? The one where you destroy your deck and you draw 3. You don't get to draw 3 if it pops up on the 3rd location. The draw 2, you can deny that from any of the turn 4 draw 2 or the location draw 2. The draw 1, the draw anything, you just deny that if you pull it. Another thing really powerful is if they're playing Electro. So it's kind of hard to get this down because you have to play this after turn. You have to play it on turn 3 instead of normally you play it on turn 2. But if they play Electro, you play Black Widow, it really shuts them down because they can't play any cards. They can't draw any cards until they play the Black Widow, but since they have Electro, they can only play 1 card per turn. So definitely won some games because of that. They just play Electro, I played Widow. Oh, they lost. So definitely a powerful card, really good, really sneaky. The more you play with it, the more you start to appreciate how good it can be. But the reason it's in the deck, right, is just to buff up the DarkHawks. Now, if you were only playing one DarkHawk, this deck wouldn't feel that good. It's like, okay, sure, you got a 11 power DarkHawk, you got a 13 power DarkHawk, woo! But the real nice thing is that we have ways to add more DarkHawks into our composition. So one of the core ways is Mystique. I actually was not running Mystique initially. So there's some evolutions to this deck. This is like the current form, final form, I would say. But I wasn't running Mystique initially, but I had some suggestions to run Mystique in the deck, and I played with it. And I was like, ooh, this is fantastic. So what this allows you to do, you copy the last ongoing ability, but we really don't have many ongoing abilities. We do have Zabu, but copying this isn't really necessary. Your cards are already cheap enough. But really the core target is the DarkHawk. So usually you'll play, if you don't have Zabu, you'll play DarkHawk on 5, Mystique on 6, and so you get 2 DarkHawk procs. And getting 2 DarkHawk procs, right, it makes these cards even better, right? This becomes a 2-mana 7 or 2-mana 6 instead of a 2-mana 4, right? Because if you're getting 2 procs, then that's twice as value. Same thing with the other cards. So you're really getting a lot of value there. But that's definitely one of the ways to copy it. Other way is with Moon Girl. So since Zabu makes your cards pretty cheap, it's actually quite easy to play a lot of your cards on the board. So being able to drop a Moon Girl turn 4, copy your DarkHawks next turn or turn 6, you can play double DarkHawk or DarkHawk Mystique is really, really good. So definitely a very strong, very core card. Moon Girl, I think, is actually just very powerful and very problematic effect. There's no downside to it. Yeah, you're losing, you're playing a 4 cost part. That's not really bad, especially for the effect that it gives you. So definitely a really strong card, Moon Girl. Really synergizes as well with the comp. Next up there, in terms of what's good about this deck, we have American Chavez. So once again, this wasn't a card I really was running initially, but I actually do think it just helps the consistency of the deck. And Chavez isn't necessarily a bad card in itself. 6 mana for 9 power isn't gonna really win too much, but due to the way the deck functions, you can have a lot of cards that are way less value. So if it's turn 6 and your hand is like Black Widow, if your hand is Mystique without DarkHawk, if your hand is just a Zabu, if you drew it like turn 5, you couldn't play it, right? This 9 power is actually relevant, and I've definitely won some games where I'm just like, okay, 9 power here, and it's good enough. So just a good card, helps the consistency, and just make sure that you get the cards when you want them. So I do like this Chavez in the deck. The next up, now we're starting to get more not required cards, but I just think fit the deck really well, are good tech pieces. We'll go from like most important. I would say White Queen. So since you're running Zabu, you want to run some 4-drops that are good, and you do have a lot of options in 4, right? So this is where people can have their own expression. I also don't have a ton of collections, so I am missing a decent amount of 4-drops, right? So you could run Absorbing Man, you could run Shuri, whatever. You can run Shang-Chi, all that stuff. So I run White Queen because, number one, I do think White Queen is a good card. It gives you information. So information is one of the most powerful resources in this game, knowing what your opponents have in their hand. And being able to see their highest cost card, you can really start predicting how they're going to play out the rest of their game. So you play this White Queen, you get to see their information. And also 6 power is actually quite relevant. So I used to run things like Jessica Jones initially. I used to run Shang-Chi initially. But I was having this issue where people would leech me, and then I would just have this 3 power card, this 4 power card that didn't really feel that good to play. It didn't really feel that strong, but I changed up my deck to kind of be leech resistant. If I think they're playing leech, I can delay my queens, my rock slides. So even if they leech me, I have Zabu on the ground on the board. I'm playing down 6 drops, 6 power, 6 power, 6 power. That's actually a lot of tempo. Even without an ability. So that's kind of why White Queen's there. It's leech resistant. It's also a very good card. So that's the thought process on that particular card. You can definitely run Shang-Chi. You can definitely run Enchantress. I think if this deck becomes more popular, Enchantress becomes like a auto include, because it destroys DarkHawk, right? It destroys Zabu, it destroys DarkHawk. It really shuts down this deck completely. But right now, Enchantress is not like that popular of a pick. I don't think it's a fun card to play, so you don't see too many people playing Enchantress. People like to do their own thing. They don't really like to make a deck just to, mess with a deck they see like every, 5 games, that kind of thing. I mean, you're not seeing DarkHawk 5 games, but like that's what I mean. Like, you're not gonna play a card to hate a deck you rarely see. So White Queen, it's good against Leech. It's not good against Leader. But DarkHawk's actually, this deck is actually very leader resistant, because even if they steal your DarkHawks, you're going to get more value from them, because you're going to be giving them rocks, so they're going to have less cards. You're going to have less cards in your deck than they have in theirs. So it's pretty leader resistant, but the White Queen's good for leech. And then following up, we do have Armor. So Armor is actually also our very recent addition. I added it in after the hot location, and also after the event that we have going on here. Armor gets a 2x boost, but Armor does protect a lot of your cards. So I was initially running Scorpion, and I think Scorpion you can pretty much run in almost every deck, but I was initially running Scorpion, right? So it affects cards in your hand -1 power. But then I come to the conclusion that I wasn't really winning games because of Scorpion. Like it's a great card. It's a fantastic card, but it's not the reason I won, right? Like, oh, his Brood was 1 power instead of 2. I won. Like, I wasn't really noticing that. Where I was noticing I would lose because of Shang-Chi, right? They would Shang-Chi my board. Shang-Chi is very easy to include in a lot of decks. And the armor just says, no, you're not doing that. Not in this lane. Shang-Chi a different lane. Thank you very much. So um it's got good power. Maybe two for three is very solid. And it just protects your board. Make sure that they can't deal with it. You can also put it on your cog if you get a turn one and just say, oh, they can't Killmonger that. It's not too relevant to lose the two power from Cog, but it's still helpful that hey, I can protect that if I want to. Um, so yeah, we just have armor in as just a protection. Just knowing where you want to play your DarkHawks, you can just play the armor beforehand and then set it up. Also, armor wins some locations. So there are some destroy locations, that the main being the primary one, but there was also a new one added that adds 2 mana and destroys the card. So turn 6, you can drop this armor in there and win that location outright. And I love cards that could do that. That they think you can't affect a location or can't touch a location, but then armor lets you do that. Those type of cards let you get lots of cubes. So definitely armor, big fan of what it does for the deck. And then finally, this is the card that I get the most questions on stream. Why do you have Scarlet Witch in the deck? Da da da. I think Scarlet Witch just fills a big niche for this deck in terms of how you want to play this deck. There are some bad locations for this particular deck where locations that don't let you play things out or only want one card or locks you out of playing, or bar with no name is also pretty bad because you tend to swarm with this deck. So being able to have the flexibility of changing a location on the fly is very strong. There are going to be some downsides where Scarlet Witch changes a location that's even worse, and then you can lose out. But I think the amount of cubes you can gain from sneaking a Scarlet Witch in is also very strong. It's also just something you can play on too. On any location you don't really like, you can just change it up and see if it's better for you. So definitely think it's nice. You always get the question, why not Storm? Why not Rhino? Right. The issue with those two is they cost 3, and the way this deck flows, you what do you want to do on turn 3? You want to play Zabu, right? What do you want to do on turn 4? You want to play double 2 cost units. What do you want to play on turn 5? You can play the 3 cost unit and the 2 cost unit. So if you run Storm or Rhino, you're basically forcing them to be your turn 5 play. And that's not really the best type of play. There's not a lot of flexibility. You really want flexibility in your decks where you can react to things that your opponent's doing. And that's what Scarlet Witch allows you to do. You can play Scarlet Witch on 2, you can play Scarlet Witch on turn 4, you can play Scarlet Witch on turn 5, and you can play Scarlet Witch on turn 6. Because being 2 mana, it just fits into the flow of how you want to play this deck very easily and can surprise them quickly. So definitely love this card. I put it in a lot of decks, and it's always one of the most common questions. Why is there a Scarlet Witch in here? What's the point of it? I don't get it. I hate Scarlet Witch. It always loses me a game. No, it doesn't. Right? And it wins you games by itself. It wins you Bar with No Name. It wins you Limbo. It wins you any location you don't like, and you can just like drop it for free and see. Obviously, there are going to be games you lose, but the upside I think is worth it. That is essentially the whole deck, and we do have a couple minutes, just to talk about little tips and tricks about this deck. So for core part of the deck, you want a 1 and a 2 primarily. Zabu on 3. If you get Zabu on 3 and you get some power. Oh, I haven't talked about Spider-Man. Whoopsie. So Spider-Man is just a stupid card, honestly. I don't understand why it's the way it is. But you win a location. You play it on turn 5, right? That's how you play this card. You play on turn 5, and then they can't play into it on turn 6. So it protects your cards from being Shang-Chi. It protects your cards from being messed with, and you can just play this by itself on an empty lane and on turn 5, and nope, they can't do anything. And you can always react, right? So even if they play into your Spider-Man lane, at least you know what they're playing, right? Oh, they played 10 power here. Okay, I can just play 11 power and I win. So it's just a very strong card. I definitely would love to see this like be a 5 drop or something. I know Professor X was 5, but you could like up its base stats because it does kind of the same thing, but it's just a very, very strong card. So yeah, so some of the tips and tricks with this, you want to play Zabu on 3. If you get Zabu on 3 and you have a good hand, you'll know what a good hand is after playing a couple games. Definitely snap. You want to snap before the Zabu comes down, because you know once you play Zabu, people and they don't have Zabu and they have a Zabu dig, they tend to leave. So you want to at least guarantee the 2 Qs by snapping early. Being Moon Girl is like your main engine for like getting these crazy boards. If you copy double Rock Slide, DarkHawk, you generate so much value. If you copy double Spider-Man, now you can lock down 2 locations turn 5. Easy way to get 2 cubes. If you copy your Mystiques, right, you can go DarkHawk on 5 and then double Mystique on 6, right? So that's actually a really cool play to catch people off guard. Even if you don't have a Zabu, you can just Moon Girl your Mystiques, and then you play the Zabu, you Moon Girl on 4, DarkHawk on 5, and then double Mystique, right? Like that's gonna be like 6 to 8 power. Most of the time it's 8 power, right? So you're dropping 16 power over two minions, right? That can be, and that it could be even more, right? So if you go like Hog and Black Widow, then you're dropping double 10 power. So really, really strong combo to do. And then White Queen just wins you, like gives you information. So sometimes you White Queen, now you know what they're doing, then you can snap. So, and then always be aware of if there's bar with no name, if there's death no main, any location that doesn't want to be played, you can change it up with Scarlet Witch and then play something else to win the lane. You don't even have to play. Sometimes Scarlet Witch alone can win Death's Domain, right? Because they aren't going to play into it. So definitely a powerful way to get those few cubes. So that's kind of the meat of the deck. I wanted a guide that people could take a look at and understand. But yeah, we're currently at 234. But I don't think the rank matters. I've never really been big on rank. We're just kind of doing it for the Twitch viewers, I'm honest. So so yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy it. If you like it, let me know in the comments, right? This is the first video. So I want to know if this is too long, you want it shorter. I want to know if this is too, no one's going to say it's too short, but I do want to know, like, what other things do you want to know about decks, you know, that kind of thing. Like, just let me know, right? Because I'm not sure, like, how much this is going to continue, but for now, you know, I'm enjoying Snap, and I do think people want to know this deck, and I think having a guide for it will be good. I know people like putting gameplay of their deck, but like, you can watch this stream if you actually need to know that. I'm not too pressed about that, but yeah, overall, hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.